We don't focus on what not to do. Is that correct? The objective in life is not to stop your children from doing anything. The objective is to get them to do a lot of things. But we get so intimidated by the things they do wrong and that focus turns them off. So we're not here to stop bad behavior. Of course, if it's dangerous, it's a different thing. Once in a while, you can say, don't lie. Don't take things that don't belong to you. But that should not be that shouldn't feel like that's our obligation and responsibility. So if your child is doing something wrong, that's not a failure. Yeah, can you agree with that?
Yeah, I think.
So if a child is not dressing tznius or not sitting tznius or behaving tznius, that is not a failure. Don't focus on the negative. The question is, what and how do we get them to do good things? That itself would change the atmosphere in the house. You stop being the policeman in your own mind. You stop being so offended or worried when they do something wrong. Because technically speaking, if you're frightened or offended by what they do, you stop being a mother. You become something else. A policeman, a prosecutor, I don't know. You become something else. You're not a mother anymore. So let's just, we're talking principles, yeah? In principle, Chabad does not believe in setting down rules past the age of 5. You see an issue, you talk about the issue. If you notice that your little girl is not sitting tzniusdik, wait for an opportunity and talk about tznius, not about her tznius. You talk about the beauty of it, a story, somebody was very tznius. You make the idea appealing, attractive, and important, not her behavior. And you trust that she's mature enough and smart enough to get the message. Like, for example, if you were to ask a young girl who is tznius, why do you do that? Why do you dress like that? I can't imagine any girl who would say, my mother told me to. And if that's the answer, it's not going to last very long. The answer should be, because that's tznius. In other words, she got the message. So as a general rule, we don't tell people what to do. We talk about the issue. Like, for example, you don't tell someone you have to love Hashem. It's a silly statement to make. You have to love Hashem. You talk about Hashem until loving Him becomes obvious and immediately correct. How else? In other words, you make the subject so real that it's undeniable. That produces the right behavior. And then it'll last. But it's scary, right? You want the bad behavior to stop now. But that's a policeman's job, not a parent's. You don't want the behavior to stop. You want the child to grow. Growing takes time. You can't grow on demand. There's a medrash that says that every blade of grass has a malach that hits it and tells it, grow. See, with grass it works. With children, it doesn't work. You can't hit them and tell them, grow. Takes time. So
Yes, with many.
It's almost like you're not thinking, how do I stop my child from doing that? You're thinking, how do I explain something to my child that they really get it? Then you're not the child's enemy. Make sense so far? If you want to go Mashiachdik, of course you can say, in the times of Mashiach, everybody will have everything they need, and we have everything we need. See, it's Mashiachdik. We don't have to worry about anything except to learn and to get to know Hashem. The child is going to say, anyone 10 years and over, what about all the anti-Semitism? What about the war? What about the fact that people who we know are passing away or getting sick? How is that Mashiachdik? So you got to take that into consideration before they ask. So I was thinking recently, there are so many positive pro-Israel, pro-Jewish statements being made by different goyim. It would be very important to play those statements for our children. They hear only one side. And the one side is so glaringly biased. They never hear the people who really respect Jews. Like there was an interview with Elon Musk, the richest guy in the country. They asked him, are you Jewish? Because the name Elon. They thought, maybe you're Jewish. He says, no, I'm not Jewish. I wish I was. So are you going to convert? No, I'm not going to convert. But I aspire to Jewish values, to Jewish lifestyle. We need to hear that. They need to hear that. It's Mashiach, Nick, no? We have to anticipate children's complaints or questions before they ask them. Once a child says, how come everybody hates us? How come there's so much violence? How come it's so dangerous? There isn't going to be a satisfying answer once they ask that question. So you got to anticipate it and give the answer before the question becomes an angry complaint. You know, the parents who are very, very sensitive and they don't want to talk about death. Look what the Torah does. What do you teach a 5-year-old? Sarah died and she had to be buried, and Avram went to find a place to bury her. No, shouldn't talk about that. It traumatizes kids. Everyone in Torah, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Yosef, Moshe, they're all described as dying. Their death is described. Not good for children? On the contrary, tell them when they're 5. Don't wait until they're angry about somebody dying. So anticipating their questions, not waiting for the question to happen. And you don't present it as a question. Not like, did you ever wonder why people die? No. Just talk about how people die. Tzaddikim. Which gives them the message that dying is not a punishment. Just using that as an example. Same thing with Yetzer Hara. What Yetzer Hara are these kids going to have to face and deal with? Anticipate it. Talk about it before it's a problem. Not as a musar. Not you need to do this because. No, this is beautiful. That is ugly. And the kid will do whatever the kid feels like doing with that information. But then it's pnimius. Then it's Chabad. Even doing what your mother says to do is a subject that needs to be introduced, not demanded or expected. Obeying your mother, wow, that's a huge topic. Honoring your parents, it's a huge topic. There was a guy who wouldn't wake up his father even though he could make a whole lot of money. You're not telling them what to do. You're talking about the subject. Good things you talk up, bad things you talk down, and that's how you educate your children. If you talk about a subject and the child does not behave accordingly,
It's Nickerson State Park.
it means you didn't explain it right. Try again. You'll find the story that really touches the child, and everything clicks, and all of a sudden the kid is behaving. That's what we want to see. We want the child to make the connection. You heard a story and you compared yourself, your behavior to the story, and you decided to change. That's beautiful. So the question of should we bribe, should we threaten, should we force? No, of course not. That's not what we want. We want Chabad. You hear something, you know it's right, it sounds good, then you do it. Even obedience. People say, you don't have to explain everything. You tell a child to do something, they should do it. Correct. Can you explain that? Have you made obedience an attractive, compelling, and an important principle to your child? No, you just want him to obey. That doesn't work. So if you want to start, make a little project. What's so beautiful about obeying? You're not telling anyone to obey anything. How do you describe the beauty and the importance of obeying? Obeying a general in the army, obeying a rebbe, obeying parents, obeying a teacher. What's beautiful about it? What's important about it? What's right about it? You'll say, you'll try, you'll explain a different way, something will click, and you'll never have to demand it. Sounds good?
Yes, but I find that you have different personalities. I'm going to talk about myself. I'm a rule follower. I think I work better with rules and that structure, and I am by nature, I think, obedient because that's my personality. And some kids are not. I work in the preschool, so 3-4-year-olds for 20 years. And you could see, and again, they learn and structure and different things like that. But the nature of a child, they're not all the same. And some kids thrive on rules and being obedient, and some kids will run the other way. And it's a much harder work, I guess, or harder way to find a way to get them to not want to do what's right because everybody else is, but because it clicks in their mind. And I'm going to say sometimes they just end up doing it because everybody else is, but not necessarily because it makes sense in their mind.
That's the job. Yes, that's exactly right. And for both, the kid who thrives on structure and order also needs to know why it's good.
Right.
That it's good. You shouldn't grow up thinking, I'm OCD. I just obey laws like a robot.
Right. No, but I think when it makes sense, and you just feel good knowing it's right, but you feel good having those rules, laws, whatever you want to call them, versus you have kids that the second you say you have to or you must, they run so far the other way.
Correct.
And it's usually those kids that need more of a...
Some children need to know what's right about what they're doing.
Right.
And the other ones have to know what is right about what they should be doing. But either way, now we read stories to children, hopefully good stories. Why? What's the point? It's entertaining.
The message.
You tell a story about somebody in a book, and you're hoping that they'll get the message concerning themselves. Not one time, not 5 times, maybe 10 times. But that's the job. That's how you raise children Chabad style. And it used to be that didn't start until after bar mitzvah. Now it's got to start much younger. There's a big advantage. A kid who's raised that way, what you're essentially doing is you're trusting the child's maturity. If you hear that something is beautiful and good, of course you're going to want to do it. That is such a compliment. And it stimulates that kind of thinking in the child. So you're training the child to think a certain way. That if something sounds right and something is true, then you do it.
Can you shift the mindset when they're 8 or 9?
You shift it from I want to, I don't want to. I don't want to, but I want to. That's not a mensch. When you model this approach, I'm going to explain something to you, and I will trust you to do the right thing with that information. You've changed the whole definition of life. Life is not about I want, I don't want. You're making a mensch out of the child just by talking that way. It makes sense? You know what I'm saying or not?
Yes.
You're showing the child that a human being is reasonable. Not a bunch of demands and appetites and moods. A human being is a reasonable being. If I'm talking sense to you, you're going to get it, you're going to hear it, and you're going to practice it. Because that's what a mensch does.
What if I don't want to be a mensch?
Huh?
What if I don't want to be a mensch right now?
So you say it again. It may take a year. Yeah, takes a while to make a mensch out of a wild animal. Children are wild animals. They're governed by instincts and impulses. You have to show them that if I talk to you like a mensch, you'll behave like a mensch. If I feel like I must force you and I must discipline you and I must punish you, you're saying to them, you'll never be a mensch. You're going to be a trained animal because I'm going to whip you into shape. That's not a good message. So is it Mashiach-dik? if it's Chabad, it's Mashiach. Chabad is an introduction to Mashiach. So Chabad means I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm going to show you what is right. And of course, you're going to hear it, you're going to get it, and you're going to do it. And if you don't, it's because I didn't explain it. I didn't put it in the right way for you to appreciate it. So I'll try again in another way. I remember in Minnesota, we had a little event for little girls, Talmud Torah class or something, I remember. I don't remember what the topic was, but we put up a little sign that said, little girls should light Shabbat candles. Everybody left. Program was over. We were cleaning up, and this little girl who had been at the program, 7 years old or something like that, she comes back to the JCC, schlepping her mother by the hand. she points to the sign, and she says, "See, it says little girls should light candles." Nobody told her. She read the sign. That's Chabad. You tell the truth, you say what you need to say, and the neshama of the listener kicks in, and then it's real. So, of course, with young children, very immature, you have to bribe them and you have to punish them. But past 5 years old, it doesn't work anymore. Either today's kids are much smarter or they're much tougher.
A bit of both, maybe.
They're not intimidated by a punishment. So I think that should be the first nekuda that parents have to get into their head. Stop trying to stop your kids. Stop them from this, stop them from that. You have good information. How do you share it with your child? Including things that the child hears on the radio or from friends or whatever about politics, about Israel, about suffering in the world, people dying, people getting sick. You got to say something. Not wait till it's a problem. Say it at the Shabbos table. I heard from one shliach, brilliant idea. The family always ate supper together, which is also a good idea. At the supper table, he would take out a Shulchan Aruch, and he would say, I was wondering what bracha do you make on such a food when you're eating it with such a food? So I looked it up. Look what it says. That's it. He didn't tell them to make brachas. He didn't tell them to bench. He said, when I didn't know what bracha to make, I looked it up. Look, here's what it says. Every day a different halacha. dinner with a din. He put the din into dinner. Basically, what it all boils down to is proactive. Educate before there's a problem. And educate, don't dictate. You want your child to learn how to obey? Well, educate that. I told you that my daughter was sitting in on a class in Beis Chana, and I was saying, you're not allowed to ask your mother to do tasks for you. She was a very little girl. And she used to sit between me and my wife at the table because she was the youngest at the time. All of a sudden, she stopped sitting there. Didn't say anything to anybody. I finally asked her, why you're not sitting here anymore? She says, because when I want something to eat, I can't ask you to pass it to me, and I can't ask mom to pass it to me. So I sit over there where I can get some food. Didn't say anything to her about that. That's chinuch. So, for example, you say to a child, you have to obey. When a mother tells you to do something, you do it. The child says, why? What are you going to say? Because I said so. Okay. You've lost the battle.
But we grew up on that, and it worked for us.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's the problem.
This new generation is made of something else.
That's right. It worked for us. Famous last words. The truth is, I don't even understand how it worked for us. What, were we so timid and so, what? Why were we so obedient?
I think that the respect for the older generation was something that, I don't know. I mean, aunts and uncles were uncle this and that. Nowadays, aunts and uncle are called by their first names. There's that generation gap that just got erased because, I don't know, we're cooler. I don't know but that blurs the line.
Yeah.
That it's
This guy Greenberg from Minnesota, the educator, Ginsburg. You remember him? He used to come to Beis Rivka, give classes. No, I remember. Anyway, he was talking to a group of parents, and they said, "How come children don't listen anymore?" He said, "When you walk in the room, do your children stand up?" And everybody said, "No." He said, "Okay, so what do you expect?" We're supposed to teach our children to stand up when we walk in the room? Yeah, they're supposed to stand up. But who does that? I don't know if the kids became cool or we became cool. Nah, you don't have to stand up. Yeah, you can sit in my chair, no problem. I'm cool. Wouldn't it be nice if children stood up when parents walked in the room? Feels a little awkward, no? Even the thought of it is like, but al pidin, you're supposed to. Anyway, that's the first step in the Mashiach thinking.
Thank you. I think the first step is not enforcing. Like you said, you teach, and then it's going to take time till they're going to process and make it personal. Giving us permission, by you giving us permission to not need them to be perfect right now, and that it doesn't reflect us as parents. This is the process of growing up. Kids are wild animals. They're going to do things wrong, and I'm slowly educating. That's a big permission that we don't necessarily give ourselves, that it's okay that this is how they look right now. It's not my fault. And it doesn't mean I'm not doing my job.
It's nobody's fault. I remember seeing this very Chassidish guy, a very smart Chassidish guy. His kid started eating without a bracha. So he said, a bracha. Kid ignored him and continued eating. It was showdown. The father said, oh, a bad mood. Never mind. Brilliant. He didn't turn it into a fight, and he didn't ignore it either. He said, if you eat without a bracha, you're probably in a bad mood, so okay. Mm-hmm. I'll wait till you're in a good mood. Not you're a bad boy. And not it's your policy. No, you're just in a bad mood. All right. He diffused the situation and made his point. If you eat without a bracha, you're probably in a bad mood. It's great.
And with tznius, if you have a girl 10 years old who knows what's right, and you've spoken, you've had conversations, maybe not enough deeper conversations that need to be had more, do you ignore as if you don't see on tznius? Or you say something, and if they're still not changing, then they're not changing.
And you haven't said the right thing yet.
Right. So if you realize you haven't said the right thing, then at the moment you pretend you don't see it. But the way we look at our children is absolutely they want to do what's right. They just have to understand. And I haven't taught it to them properly yet, but it's not a question whether or not it works for them, whether or not they're going to want it. This is this is truth. So we're looking up at them, not down at them. And I think that for many of us, we were never raised with these kinds of conversations, with this kind of deeper explanations. And that's why we may not know how to bring our children along in the Chabad way. Because if we were told to do what's right, and we were either it was enforced or it was bribed, or we had the nature of following, then we didn't go through the process of being raised by stories and conversations. We just did what was right. So we don't know exactly the words and how to say it and how to explain it and how to verbalize it. Even for ourselves, we may not. Obedience. How do you explain why obedience is so good? Maybe we never thought about it.
Yes. That's exactly our problem.
That's exactly our problem. So if we have these conversations on a regular basis where we pick one subject at a time, where you explain it to us, and we, think about it in different ways of how it could be meaningful to the children, and then we go ahead and try to have these conversations and then come back to you and tell you how it goes.
And it's also very helpful that we talk to people who are not frum, and we try to explain to them what tznius is, and we discover what tznius is. What would you say to a grown woman who sits in your house and she's not tznius? What would you say? Go change? Go get dressed? You can't come into my house like that? What would you say? You find some very smart things to say. We're good at shlichus. So you do know.
So we're also good at accepting people the way they are, and would never even think to talk to her about modesty. We might talk to her about Shabbos candles, because it doesn't need explanation. It's not so personal. It's like, it's so beautiful, light a candle. But I'm going to start talking to her about the way she dresses and the way modesty and about obedience and about, these are more sensitive subjects.
It's going to come up. Very often women come in and say, am I dressed properly? Is it okay if I dress like this? No, what are you going to say? No, it's vulgar. You're an animal. No, you come up with brilliant insights.
I think the information is there. It's just that we don't think.
The perks of outreach. You get to know stuff.
And what about creating opportunities for kids to do miftzayim and outreach?
Of course. That's everything.
So,
what have you done to make the world better? That's everything.
So that's the theme of the club that we want to create, where you get together, where you have meetings, where you have conversations, you talk on different subjects, and then you have opportunities to go make the world a better place.
An 11-year-old girl who goes on miftzayim, and she likes it. She enjoys it. Giving out candles, telling people when Lichbenchen is. Does she know how important the candles are? She's not there to make conversations with every woman that she stops. But if a woman were to say to her, why is this so important? Could she answer? And if she can't, then we're not educating her good. You stand there for hours getting people to light Shabbos candles, and you have no idea why it's important. It's not good. That's shallow. We're not educating. We're just expecting. Expect you to do this and expect you to do that. It's not Chabad.
Sometimes we expect the school to educate. It doesn't
Yeah.
happen.
That too. That's a whole other subject.
Yeah.
So that's installment number 1.
Thank you.
It's a great start.
Yes, it's a lot to think about.
Yeah.
Yeah. Key word is think.
Yeah.
And get the kid to think.
We're so busy as mothers doing everything that needs to be done that do we take time to stop and think?
Right. But I also think that something that you said, Ricky, is right, is that we were raised a certain way. Those conversations were not, we didn't have those conversations. We just did because we were told to do, and this is how we were raised. And so we don't think necessarily, you have to make a bracha, you have to daven. We can't start the day until you daven because this is what we heard and it worked for us.
Yeah.
It doesn't work anymore. And when they say why, sometimes we don't know, or we don't have maybe we know deep down, but we need to dig and think to be able to have that right answer that will connect with that child. And sometimes we don't have the answer because we never had to think about it. We were told to do, we did. We love doing it. We continue doing it, but it doesn't mean we have the answers.
So you think about the story with the Frierdiker Rebbe. His father told him when he was 6 how you say Moida Ani. You have to sit up, put your hands together. This was new information to the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the Frierdiker Rebbe said, why? So his father said, I really shouldn't answer that, but I will. And he called in the old man who was the caretaker in the house, who was already 80 years old. And he asked him, how do you say Moidani? He said, I sit up, I put my hands together. And the Rebbe said to him, why? He said, that's what my father taught me. So then the Rebbe said to the Frierdiker Rebbe, you see, he's 80 years old, and for him it's enough that his father told him. You're 6 years old and it's not enough for you? So did he simply say you have to? Do what I tell you?
No, but he did tell him why.
Huh? He showed him the beauty of obedience.
Right.
For 80 years, the man does it a certain way because his father told him. So it doesn't have to be an intellectual discussion and Kabbalah of Maidani. But make it convincing. If hearing it from an 80-year-old man is convincing, fine. But it's so interesting that Rebbe didn't say, you have to listen to your father. He would have listened. But that's not chinuch. So the project is a good one, a necessary one. It's not a how-to. It's chinuch.